What up? What up?
What's up? What's up,
What
man?
up? What up, man? What up, man? Welcome to Yah'm saying podcast in the year 2022, man. You know what I'm saying? It's good to be here, with everything going on, man. There's a lot going on, you know, uh, in the world, everybody dealing with COVID in some sort of way, you know, whether it's work or at home, man. So, so if you're watching this, man, be blessed that you're here, man, and things of that nature, man. What up, Jayla?
What's up, man? Yeah, I'm dealing with COVID symptoms now.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was lingering, um,
Mm-hmm.
so it ran through my house.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Same here,
yeah,
man. Same here. It's gonna touch people in some sort of way, man. So,
yeah.
but we're going to delve too much into that, man. Just hey, man, thank you guys for watching, for tuning in. Whether you tune in now or tune in later, man. Today, we're gonna talk about Dr. King, man, reclaiming Dr. King, man. I think it's pertinent because if you're not paying attention to the news or anything like that, there are these states and these groups out there that are passing a lot of anti-CRT, legislation, anti-CRT laws, and everything like that. And what they're doing is really trying to, uh, I guess, pervert. Really, really, that's really what they're doing. They're perverting education and the education system. You know what I'm saying? And they're taking away a lot of Black history. That's what they're doing, and for over 40 years or so since the MLK Day became an actual holiday. There's this myth about Dr. King that's been told, and it's wrapped in a lot of color blindness. You know what I'm saying? Content of the character and color of the skin. You know what I'm saying? Type of rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? And with that, a lot of the real Dr. King, the radical Dr. King that talked about not only just social justice, he talked about economic justice and what that means and what that looks like. You know what I'm saying? And for a lot of us, well, for Americans, we have really believed this myth. You know what I'm saying? To our detriment, really. And for Black people, we have believed this myth to our detriment. You know what I mean? And sometimes, a lot of people like to, they like to compare Martin Luther King and Dr. King, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, excuse me,
Mhm,
and not understanding that they pretty much said the same thing, and they
mhm.
both were right. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna delve into giving Dr. King context. That's what we're gonna do today, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, John. You had anything to add to that?
Yeah, man. It's just some of the things that we want to reclaim from Dr. King is really his legacy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and his message, and really get to a pointed context of who he was actually speaking to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and what was the message actually about. And like you're pointing out, we've been dealing with the narrowing down of his message, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the watering down of his
Yeah,
message.
watering down or whitewashing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and his message rings loud even today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, man. So, yeah, we want to delve into that and give it context, man. And the one of the first places that we got to start, of course, is the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech, man, because this is where I think a lot of the everybody don't know this speech. Like, let's be honest,
mhm,
people
mhm,
haven't actually read it. You know what I'm saying? And given context to what it is and who Dr. King was talking about. You know what I'm saying? So Dr. King gives this speech in August of 1963. And he's there at the March on Washington. And of course, why is he there on March on Washington? Um, he's there for the March on Washington because the March on Washington was about, uh, the March on Washington was about jobs and freedom. And of course, jobs and freedom are intersect. And that's another thing people don't understand. Like these things like intersect,
Mhm,
Martin Luther King, talked about how, freedom is connected to economics, you know what I'm saying? And, they're not separate from each other. But, but the flyer for that March on Washington um, says that millions of Negroes are denied freedom. Millions of citizens, black and white, are unemployed. We demand meaningful civil rights laws, massive federal works programs, full and fair employment, decent housing, the right to vote, adequate integrated education you know. So that's why he was there, on that march on Washington, along with John Lewis. And now we know,
mhm,
today, people are trying to, are we trying to get our government to do what's right and pass
mhm,
the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But again, you know, we can't get individuals who act on code. When we're talking about cinema and mansion, they act on code with, with just being white, on being honestly,
mhm,
the majority of the people that vote or will vote, they're just on code with these individuals who think that black people asking for these things or voting rights is a black issue and it's really an American issue, you know. And they think that, because black people and Americans are asking for this, that somehow there's a slice of the pie that's taken and the pie is going to get smaller. You know what I'm saying? If we pass these voting rights and prevent, all these redistricting that's diluting the power of black people, in certain pockets, certain counties of this country. But yeah, so that's the context. Martin Luther King was there because of, there was March on Washington because of jobs, and economics. You know what I'm saying? And a part in the "I Have a Dream" speech, that everybody talks about is where he says, "I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the content of their skin, but the content of their character." You know, uh, again, he was very deliberate in who he was saying, talking about. He said, "My four little children." He wasn't. He didn't say. He didn't say little children, right?
mhm, mhm,
He said, "My little children." You know what I mean? And his children are black, and by proxy, he's talking about other black kids. You know what I'm saying? Um, you know, uh, and he said that they will not be judged by the color of their skin and the content of their character. He was specifically talking about black people,
mhm.
and people take this and try to twist it and say, oh, Martin Luther King said we shouldn't be judged by the content of our character and the color of our skin. No, Martin Luther King was very deliberate in saying black people should not be judged by the content, character, or color of skin because of the conditions, then and now, was that uh, uh, black people are judged by the content of our skin, or judged by the color of our skin, right?
Mhm.
This is when people have, I mean, just watch Fox News. You know what I mean? Like, just watch Fox News, and anytime they bring up black on black crime, or anytime they bring up, anytime, when George Floyd was murdered, what was the first thing they brought up? They brought up his, him being a, drug addict or something like that. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? Um, when Breonna Taylor was murdered, they brought up, oh, their boyfriend was a drug dealer or something crazy,
Mhm.
their ex-boyfriend or something like that was a drug dealer, or, you know what I mean? So, so these things still popped up, and he was specific in saying that, white people don't have to worry about being judged by the content and character or the color of your skin because the overall racial hierarchy benefits you already. So
Right.
you don't have to worry about that, man. And if people are being honest about it, all you got to do is watch TV, man. Watch TV. Look at who all these fictional heroes are and sheroes are. You know what I'm saying? To understand, what King and who King was talking to and talking about during that point, and also what people don't know is that was an ad lib part of his speech. I was trying to find an original copy where he like he like added it in later.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, I want to monologue on that
No,
part.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
you're good.
Mm-hmm,
But you touched on some really key points,
mm-hmm,
especially when you're talking about the news media.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, as we know, Malcolm X got a famous quote talking about the news media, how um, it will let's see, let me get to the quote. The media, the most powerful entity on earth, they have the power to make the innocent guilty and make the guilty innocent.
mm-hmm.
So when you see the Tucker Carlsons and those people, and I really read that slow so people can really grasp the words, and like, man, when we are looking at media today, man, CNN just did a piece talking about the John Lewis Act, and basically on air sat back and said, "Oh well, it's over,"
Mm-hmm.
and that happened on CNN.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's happening with our media? They are becoming provocateurs.
Mm-hmm.
Clickbaiting, making a boogeyman. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
they did with Martin Luther King. They
Yeah.
made him a boogeyman, even though his message was simply about economic equality.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, man, it is. Yeah, it's interesting, man. How we got to this point, this Santa classification, as Dr. Cornell West said, of Martin Luther King, and it's done. It's done deliberately. It's done deliberately with the whole point of, making sure that Black people don't go back to the streets, rioting and fighting for, economic repair and economic justice and there are Black people who said that Martin Luther King didn't fight for reparations because he didn't say the word reparations. You know
Right.
what I mean? He said economic justice, and he in many different ways, right? He spoke of housing. There's an interview. I think that happened like a year or 11 months before he passed away, and he talks about what economic justice is. You know what I'm saying? How basically Europeans came to this country, they got affirmative action, you know what I'm saying? And they were given land, and they were given housing, and they were given well-paying jobs and everything like that. And while Black people weren't given those things, we were left out of a lot of things economically, man. Um, yeah, man. But yeah, I find it interesting, that's that like Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan issued Proclamation 5597. You know what I'm saying? um and in it, he mentions a speech that Martin Luther King gives in 1961, where Martin Luther King says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Yeah, and then, but later in the speech, Martin Luther King uh, also says that, ever since the founding fathers of our nation dreamed this noble dream, America has been something of a schizophrenic personality, tragically divided against itself. On the one hand, we have proudly professed the principles of democracy, and on the other hand, we have sadly practiced the very antithesis of those principles. You know what I mean? And this is why, meanwhile, while Reagan didn't mention this part of the speech, Reagan goes on to tear down a lot of civil rights legislation that happened, because he was very against civil rights,
Yeah.
um, you know, and And so he, in the same breath that he's mentioning Martin Luther King and his proclamation, what I mean, he also, is going, tearing down, a lot of Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King,
Mhm.
he believed that Martin Luther King stood for, you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so
No,
yeah, I'm trying to find that. I'm trying to find the actual proclamation here because I had it up here. Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to find it because there's a lot of stuff that I found that was very you know hypocritical of
mm,
Ronald
right,
Reagan. And really, what Ronald Reagan did was he painted, he began to paint Martin Luther King into this mythical being of of only wanting racial, only wanting racial integration. You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right.
And that's not all King wanted. He wanted economic
Hmm.
freedom, in the form of a universal basic income, healthcare, child care, you know what I'm saying? And jobs, you know, those are the things. And he mentions those in various forms, what I mean, anytime to give a speech, they kind of like build on each other, they like
Yeah,
connect to each other, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the march in Memphis with the
Hmm.
sanitation workers. Well,
Right, right.
that was the message.
Hmm.
The wages of those sanitation workers were not of at par with their counterparts. Um, the health care, they didn't have access to health care. Um,
Hmm.
so his message was very clear, and like you were pointing out, he tied all of these I guess the the lectures all
Right.
together.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so people just one gotta sit back and do some research. That's one. Um,
Hmm.
but we know how everything is being misdirected, right? Because you don't
Hmm.
today you don't have to do any research. You can just sit back and just say a simple quote from Martin Luther King, and the end quote from "I Have a Dream," and leave it at that. Um,
Right, right, right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So you know,
Yeah.
and it was a I was watching a news clipping
Hmm.
from the day after Martin Luther King was killed
Hmm.
um, up in Jersey,
Hmm.
and the newscast he's asking questions about how they feel and so forth, and literally in this clip they're quoting the end part of his speech where he's talking about you know um, judging the color of the skin
Content
and
and
so
character, color
yeah,
scheme.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And,
Uh-huh.
and the newscaster when he ended, he called it out. He sat
Hmm.
back and
Hmm.
said, "One thing that you're going to realize is that most white people, when on camera, they will never say racist things."
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
And he was then going into how they gave a narrow message.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's really what content and character and color skin is. It's a narrow message, you know what I'm saying? Because it's narrow because you don't have to do anything,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like that's the whole point, you know what I'm saying? That was the whole point of, and Reagan in a lot of ways continued what Richard Nixon, did
Hmm.
with black people, when Richard Nixon talked about black capitalism. And I will be doing a podcast on the myth of black capitalism. But
Hmm.
what Richard Nixon would do is say, talk about black capitalism and not do anything about it. He wouldn't, He would just be like, "Oh no, what?" And the similarities between that message of black capitalism and Reagan, talking about, or these individuals, content and character individuals, what I'm saying, is that they put the issue back onto black people, right?
Right. Right.
Right, right. Look,
Yeah.
content and character. Oh, look, content and character. Look, I'm not judging you by the content and character, so you just need to make it. And at the same time, black people are like, well, how can I make it if I gotta, if I'm gonna be judged by my hairstyle? Or how
Right.
can I make it if, if when I submit an application, what I mean, my name is gonna be judged. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How can I make it? You know what I mean? If I'm judged off of my credit score, what I mean?
Hmm.
Things that
Hmm.
happen today. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these, again, it's easy. Content and character color of skin is easy because it, it doesn't put any responsibility on, on people at the other end who created racism and created a lot of these issues.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It don't put any pressure on them to do anything. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. They
yeah.
never have to do any work.
No, no, they don't have to do any work, and that's why, a lot of these people subscribe to content and character and color of skin. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying?
Hmm.
Rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? This myth telling of Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? Um, you know, uh, but yeah, man, it is, again, and it's also, that people don't add context. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The reason why, like you were saying, the reason why the news can do what it is that they can do, manipulate people, however, because
Hmm.
they don't expect people to understand context or go
Hmm.
research beyond what it is that they're talking about, right? They just
Right.
expect them to come back to the news, you know what I mean? Oh,
Hmm.
come back to us and we're going to be the ones that tell you, the
Yeah.
context and everything like that, you know what I'm saying? So, um but yeah, man, and another thing, that we talked about was Coretta Scott King, right? Coretta Scott
Hmm.
King was not a fan of Ronald Reagan. A lot of black people weren't
Right. Right.
a fan of Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan was like Rush Limbaugh before there was a Rush Limbaugh kind of sort
Hmm.
of, personality. He ran for president in like 70, I don't know, 74 or something like that, or 76, somewhere around there. He ran for president and he lost, right?
Hmm.
So during that time that he lost, he got on the radio and he was like, dogging everything about civil rights, black people,
Hmm.
blah blah blah, using all this code language and stuff. And Coretta Scott King, she had a quote. I'm gonna see if I can find the quote here to get the exact quote. But she said that uh, uh, that Ronald Reagan was gonna like usher in like the KKK and and the white nationalists. You know what I mean? She was close. She was
Yeah.
close.
She was close.
She was
She was
close.
close.
Because that's exactly what it ends up. That's what ends up happening. You know what I mean? When you think about after Ronald Reagan leaves office. Once Ronald Reagan leaves office, you get Pat Buchanan,
Hmm.
running.
Hmm.
Or first you get David Duke running. Pat Buchanan adopts David Duke's message. You know what I'm saying? And then there's Newt Gingrich, and then there's
Yeah.
the Tea Party.
Hmm.
And today, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those some breadcrumbs for people to follow.
Well,
Um,
Ronald Reagan was Trump looked up to Ronald Reagan.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so to tie into what you're saying is this is how it snowballed
Hmm.
into
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, man, and we're talking about Dr. King and his message, and talking about how he's been miscast, mythicized, created into this Santa Claus, really, and really, we want to get back to the radical King, and one of those speeches that he gave that I want to highlight. Is The Other America. He gave this speech in 1967. This would be about 4 years after he gives his "I Have a Dream" speech, and in this, when we're talking about, when we're talking about, King talked about economics and things of that nature, so in this speech, he says, uh, he talks about extremism, and talks about what was happening through civil rights, and things of that nature. And he says that, the struggle for or civil rights, and people don't understand this, is that, he said the struggle for civil rights was about human decency. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, the civil rights wasn't just about, black people trying to, eat at a lunch counter. It was about
Hmm.
being human, being treated humanely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so how we frame civil rights, is a little problematic too. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because we frame it in America as black people. Oh, black people were fighting for, to be recognized, in this country. No, black people were fighting to be human beings, man, to
Yeah.
be viewed as simply as human beings. And this country wasn't allowed them to be human because of separate but equal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And separate but equal meant that, hey, you can have two bathrooms, but one could be a nice bathroom, and the other one doesn't have to be a nice bathroom. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? One water fountain can have clean drinking water. The other one doesn't have to have clean drinking water. They're
Right.
separate, but equal. They got water. You know.
Yeah.
Um, so, but in this speech, he says, as we look at, this is the speech called "The Other America," which I think is his best speech. But in this speech, he says, as we look at these problems, we see them growing and developing every day. We see the fact that the Negro economically is facing a depression in his uh, everyday life that is more staggering than the depression of the 30s. The unemployment rate of the nation as a whole is about 4%. Statistics would say from the Labor Department that among Negroes, it's about 8.4%. But these are the persons who are in the labor market who still go to employment agencies to seek jobs, and so they can be calculated. The statistics can be gotten because they are still somehow in the labor market. But there are hundreds of thousands of Negroes who have given up. They've lost hope. They've come to feel that life is a long and desolate corridor for them with no exit sign. And so they no longer go to look for a job. There are those who would estimate that these persons who are called the discouraged persons, these 6 or 7% in the Negro community, that means that the unemployment among Negroes may well be 16%. Among Negro youth in some of our larger urban areas, it goes to 30 and 40%. So you can see what I mean when I say that in the Negro community, there is a major, tragic, and staggering depression that we face in our everyday lives. So
Hmm.
again, yeah, he's talking about, economics. He's talking
Right.
about that. He's talking again. He's intersecting. You know what I mean? Right before that, he talks about. Right before that, he talks about the racism, and how the racism leads to the unemployment. You know what I mean? He talks about the
Hmm.
intersectionality of both. You know what I mean? That, yeah, you got Negroes who are going and applying for jobs and they ain't getting jobs. Like, what do you
Right. Right.
what do you expect? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And as always, even today, for a supposed 14% of the people, and again, I think we're closer to 20%,
Hmm.
because we are grossly we grossly are undercounted in the census.
Yeah.
But black unemployment rate is always double white unemployment rate, and that
Right.
don't math. That don't math right.
Right.
You know. So,
Right.
but yeah, 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 yeah. I just wanted to touch on that. Yeah, yeah.
No,
Go
no,
ahead, bro.
that was a good point.
Yeah,
That was a good point.
yeah, yeah,
So you want to go through another quote
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you got some quotes or something that hit you, you can do that.
no, I was asking basically did you
Oh yeah,
do
yeah,
you have
yeah, 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 man. Yeah, yeah. Let me see here. Yeah, man. Let me see. Yeah, let me go through this. Let me go through this one quote that he has where he's talking about peace, and this was in 1956. This was right before he let me see. This was 1956. This was uh, right after, well, a couple years after the Brown v. Board, or actually
Hmm.
2 years after the Brown v. Board decision. And a woman by Autherine Lucy, she goes and tries to apply for Alabama. She actually applied for the University of Alabama in 1945, and then she goes and applies for Alabama again after Brown v. Board of Education. She goes to Alabama for 3 days, and well, she applies to Alabama. She gets accepted to Alabama because Brown v. Board is torn down. And what Brown v. Board does, it essentially gets rid of segregation. So that's what a lot of Martin Luther King and all these individuals are trying to get all these states to recognize, that segregation is ended, especially in education. And
Yeah.
so she goes to Alabama, and she goes to so for 3 days, white people like rioted basically
Mm.
to get her kicked out of Alabama.
Wow.
She just got her honorary doctorate in 2019.
Wow.
2019. Just got her honorary doctorate in 2019.
Hmm.
Yeah, she got a master's degree in like the 90s or something in education. Um,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, but in this speech, Dr. King talks about peace, and he talks about how peace is. I'm trying to get to that part. Um, like he talks about peace and how peace can be an obnoxious peace, right?
Mm.
How peace for the sake of complacency,
Hmm.
is a problem. I mean, peace just because you don't want to, hey man, I don't want to cause any problems, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to say anything, you know what I'm saying? And that's really a condition, I like to say, turn it down your blackness, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
people we constantly live in this state where we're always
Hmm.
turning down our blackness, or like a lot of people like to call it code switching. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
it's obnoxious because, like Dr. King is talking about in the other America, there's two different Americas people, we live in, many
Yeah.
people have different Americas, but he said but he said, uh, he says this text is he's talking about text he's talking about he gives a Bible verse prior to this,
Hmm.
um and he's talking about that the text, um uh that he says the text is saying in substance, peace is not merely the absence of some negative force, war, tensions, confusion, but it is the presence of some positive force, justice, goodwill, the power of the kingdom of God. I had a long talk the other day with a man about this bus situation. Yeah, and that's right. He was in Alabama because of the
Hmm.
bus. And again, they were there to affect the busing situation
Right.
economically. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So yeah. So he said I had a long talk the other day with a man about this bus situation. He discussed the peace being destroyed in the community, the destroying of good race relations. Right? We hear a lot of this talk,
Hmm.
nowadays. You know what I mean? Oh,
Hmm.
why are we going? Why are we destroying the race relations? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is when peace gets obnoxious. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, you know, we heard it a lot during the Obama years. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Civil
Go
rights
ahead.
is divisive.
Right. Civil
Yeah.
civil
Yeah.
rights is right. What Juneteenth? Oh, when Juneteenth became a holiday. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Well, oh my gosh, you're just why are we causing so much division? You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? That's the new thing, right? That's the new thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we causing so much? This is just so divisive. I don't understand. Why do we have to have a separate holiday? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? You know what I mean? And again, you get the individuals like Candy Owens, who come
Mm.
out, what I mean, to be like, hey, not all of us Negroes celebrate
Yeah. Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah, man. But but he goes on to say that I agree that it is more tension now, but peace is not merely to absence of this tension, but the presence of justice. And even if we didn't have this tension, we still wouldn't have positive peace. Yes, it is true that if the Negro accepts his place, accepts exploitation and injustice, there will be peace. you know
Hmm.
but and right, we're seeing it today with the voting rights, conversation and things of that nature. And if anybody's participating in the anti-CRT,
Right.
conversations, you know what I'm saying, is these individuals that are like, oh, hey man, hey, let's just, let's just let them have it, you know what I'm saying.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying, you see black people in the background clapping with Ron DeSantis, you know what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying, who's creating a fascist state, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And at the same time, they want to quote Martin Luther King while also removing Martin Luther King from classrooms. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. For the sake of peace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so he says, yes, it is true that if the Negro accepts his place, accepts exploitation and injustice, there will be peace, right? Um, and again, that part about injustice, it just popped in my head. Colin Kaepernick, right? Colin Kaepernick
Hmm.
peacefully
Yeah.
takes a knee. That's because that's in his right as an individual, and under the Constitution. You know what I'm saying? But again, people were talking in this language like, oh, well, why is he being so divisive?
Right.
It's disturbing the peace, man. It's disturbing the race relations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Again, it's putting this back on black people, that we are the ones, what I'm saying,
Yeah, yeah.
responsible for race relations and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, and he goes on to say, but it would be an obnoxious peace. It would be a peace that boiled down to stagnant complacity, deadening passivity. And if peace means this, I don't want peace. If peace means accepting second class citizenship, I don't want it. If peace means keeping my mouth shut in the midst of injustice and evil, I don't want it. Again, going back to Colin Kaepernick,
Hmm.
right? If peace means being complacently adjusted to a deadening status quo, I don't want peace, right? This is where we're talking about the George Floyd protests and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If peace means a willingness to be exploited economically, again, here's Dr.
Hmm.
King talking about
Hmm.
economics.
Hmm.
If peace means a willingness to be exploited economically, dominated politically, humiliated, and segregated, I don't want peace. In a passive, nonviolent manner, we must revolt against this peace. Jesus says in substance, I will not be content until justice, goodwill, brotherhood, love, yes, the kingdom of God are established upon the earth. This is real peace. Peace is the presence of positive good. That is the Dr. King that
Yeah.
people don't want to quote. And this was 7 years prior to his March on Washington speech.
Wow.
You know, yeah, 7 years prior to his March on Washington speech, right? You know what I'm saying? And it goes to show that, hey, and I really like that. You know what I mean? I read that and I was like, wow. You know what I mean? It's so
Yeah.
much correlation, and it shows how prophetic that Dr. King was, you know what I'm saying? When he was speaking, you know what I'm saying? But again, they don't want to quote this version of Dr. King, because if you quote this version of Dr. King, then you realize that sitting back and doing nothing is not the answer. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
When you understand that, millionaires and billionaires made money through the pandemic,
Hmm.
and other people did not make money through the pandemic, lost money, that's a
Yeah.
problem. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? And these individuals that fight against $15 minimum wage, and fight against free healthcare, fight against
Hmm.
the globalization. You know what I'm saying? These individuals are, they want an obnoxious piece. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Black women in 2021
Hmm.
was the fastest growing business owners.
Hmm.
They were growing at about 8%.
Hmm.
After the pandemic, so it was about 2022, 21. Um, so after basically when they started opening up everything, it's back down to 3%.
Mm, mm,
So this is the economic justice like that Martin Luther King was talking about.
mm-hmm,
Um, because it's no way that Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or those guys made the money that they did if it wasn't off the backs of actual people.
right. The exploitation.
The exploitation.
Right, right. It's still there's still exploitation. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
Um, yeah. Yeah, man, especially when we're talking about, black people, as a people only, and we had this conversation before, and we'll probably have it again about how black people have hovered around this 40%. I'm talking black people. We're talking the quote unquote 40 million. Again, I think it's still upwards of 60 million, but the quote unquote 40 million of black people. Only 40% of us are homeowners. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And with that, if with that, you only, of course, people talk about spending power, but then there's wealth. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
You don't have wealth if only 40% of you, of a group of people, you know what I'm saying, an ethnic group together, have the ability to pass on wealth, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Be-
Did you have any, oh, go ahead, bro.
no, no. I was just gonna say, and it was designed that way, right?
Hmm, hmm.
Because if you can take the economics from a group, how can they fund leaders like Martin Luther King?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Stokely Carmichael, like
Mhm.
all of these, and we are in this place where you're starting to see this narrative that black people are buying into is basically saying, um, yeah, they rather for a civil rights leader to die broke.
Right, 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 right.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
it,
Mhm. Oh, you talking
and
about like, oh, go ahead.
no, 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 I was just going to close and just say, you know, you don't have civil rights without funding.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true, man. And I was talking about you're specifically talking about people that was coming down on Black Lives Matter, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and not understanding like, look, you can't have these movements without funding, man. It
Right.
just ain't gonna work. It just ain't
Yeah.
gonna work. Yeah. And you were talking about Harry Belafonte and Martin Luther King. Like,
So,
bring that point up.
so I found an interesting point that ties into that.
Hmm.
Harry Belafonte was paying Martin Luther King's bills at his house so he can basically go out and have these speeches and so forth, and and Miss Coretta and the
Hmm.
kids would feel like basically they can have a normal life and they can go about their lives while he's fighting economic justice.
Hmm.
And if you don't have a Harry Belafonte, you don't have the civil rights. We just made that point.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and people don't understand how important that is, um, by funding these leaders.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, man, that's true, man. Harry Belafonte, Sammy Davis Jr., Sidney Poitier, who just became an
Hmm.
ancestor, all these men, um, really were important in the civil rights, in the civil rights struggle and supported it, through various means, and I hope people learn about these individuals because I did hear black people talking bad about, not understanding,
Yeah,
context, about, and again, I can blame it on, their ignorance because I was ignorant too of these gentlemen's contributions, you know what I'm saying? But once you research it, you realize Look, man, they were about our people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they were very instrumental in the civil rights movement and and how it was supported. Yeah, how it was
Yes.
supported.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man. Um, yeah, go ahead, John. Yeah, you
No,
got
no,
anything else?
no. It's a few comments. Uh, in the
Oh, okay.
feed.
Oh, wow, I didn't even see that. What am I
Yeah.
doing? Yo, what up? 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 Yeah, man. Dang, I didn't even see that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We go ahead and tackle some of these, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is from the homie Kelvin, man. Kaylee.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Let's see here. Let me see. I ain't got to show. We
So,
doing this so early in the morning, man.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, man. Uh, let's see here. Let's see here.
Um,
Uh, Yeah, he was saying he was killing racism, and bringing classism to the forefront. Yeah. I would say he was addressing racism. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Because later, in his speech in 1968, he realizes, and I think I have the notes on that one. When he's talking about, I think it's in the Other Americas, he realized that, hey, he can't get rid of race. He realizes that if if you address the economics, you can limit racism. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? You can
Mm-hmm.
limit the effects of racism, right? And that was a good comment there, brother Caitlin. And that um, if you give people a foundation economically, they can withstand. They can withstand the isms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like athletes today. Athletes, celebrity, black athletes, celebrities, they have the money to withstand, any racism or anything that happened to them. You know what I'm saying? Let's not forget that LeBron had niggers spray painted on his garage. You know what I'm saying? So he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't he wasn't totally immune from it, but he was immune enough from it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and the part that the peoples didn't like, really, the powers that be didn't like, was that Martin Luther King was trying to bring the classes together, similar to the populist movement in the late 1890s, when black people, who were the majority poor people in this country, and Europeans, who would later become white, they got together and was like, hey, we just need to come together on class, on economics,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to go and vote and put people in the office, who have our similar interests, who have our
Mm-hmm.
best interests economically. And that's what happened. And you get the populist movement, and, you get the populist party, and that's how you get Bernie Sanders today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, man. And yeah. And he did say we coming for that check.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be dope on a shirt, man. That would be dope on a shirt. Yeah, for
that
real, man.
that
Because
would.
yeah, because again, he understood he understood, as many black leaders understood. You know what I mean? Again, he didn't specifically say reparations, but he said reparations. You know what I mean? He
Mm-hmm.
said there need to be repair. You know what I mean?
Right.
Martin Luther King would word things in that there was social justice. He would word it in that, when he talked about justice or whatever, he's talking about economic justice. That's the context, And one thing that I realized as I looked at, several of these speeches, they build on each other. You know what I mean? They build on each other. And King becomes radical because guess who he's associated with? Well, King is associated with Stokely Carmichael. You know what I
Right.
mean? Who's Stokely Carmichael? He later becomes Kwame Ture. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
And if you don't know, Kwame Ture was a really, he was a pretty much a socialist,
Yeah.
but he was about economic repair and all and all these other things, reparations and stuff. And Martin Luther King started speaking in that language, not totally, because Martin Luther King understood his audience. You know what I mean? He understood that people saw him as a Christian minister. You know what I mean? And they saw it, and he understood that the tactics was like, hey, I need to speak in a way to where you know white people would listen. You know what I mean?
Right.
White people will listen and black people will do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So when he's at the church, you know what I mean? If you notice his tone changes, you know what I mean? He starts code switch, right? You know what I mean? He's like, and we coming for that check. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. Yeah, man. So yeah, man. Yeah, man. And of course, yeah, man, it was a village, man. Everywhere he went, he was taken care of. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. Me being a Mason, I know when he went to Atlanta, there was several churches in Atlanta that wouldn't allow King to go in except for this. So when King, I can't remember what speech he gives, but when King, there's a certain speech he gives in Atlanta, and they wouldn't allow him in the church, but down the street they allowed him to go into the Masonic Hall. And so when they allowed him to go into the Masonic Hall, other Masons are posted on top of the roof um, with guns. It's a Masonic Hall that is right down the street from his home church. His
Mm.
home church wouldn't allow him back and speak. You know what I mean? Because they didn't want their church bombed.
Yeah.
And you get it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to bomb, but the Masons was like, "Oh yeah, nah, they can try.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can try. We got some firepower." So the Masons like posted up on the rooftop of the building, and then they posted up across the street. You know what I'm saying? And allow Dr. King to speak. Yeah, yeah, pretty good. Yeah, man. Is there anything of note that you picked up on?
No. So what what I picked up on was people got to understand with Dr. King how the FBI was really really key on trying to destroy this movement.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and it's always been our relationship with this organization, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, and how they set up other pastors um, against Dr. King
mm-hmm,
in other places. So and how they were trying to fracture the relationship between the Kennedys and Dr. King.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so we have to understand that these are colliding points. Usually in our movement. I know you were reading a book that you were showing me earlier, which kind of goes into.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm just holding the book
Yeah.
up.
No,
Mm-hmm,
no, it
mm-hmm,
just people got to understand with these civil rights movements how we have chaos agents, how we have provocateurs, um, during the Memphis March, um, with Dr. King. It was about 7,000 people, but the young group that came out was trying to basically they started to riot.
mm-hmm,
And people got to understand we have chaos agents in our group
mm-hmm.
that will always try to destroy the forward progress that has
Oh yeah.
always been. You can go to uh, Candace Owens, you can go to Larry Elder, you can go to many other people, um,
Mm-hmm,
but we always had those agents.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true, man. And the individual that you're talking about, that was a that the FBI pretty much paid to sabotage the civil rights movement. that he was a black preacher. His name was Elder Lightfoot Solomon
Mm-hmm.
Michal. I'm pretty sure that's he's from probably from Louisiana with that last name.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and he looked Creole. Uh, yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, he publicly discredited, Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and he criticized Martin Luther King regularly. He was like one of the first pastors to have like a big radio thing with preaching.
Yeah.
One of the first black pastors, or one of the first pastors, really, one of the first
Right.
pastors. Yeah, 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 yeah. And yeah, man, yeah. There's always these chaos agents, man.
Yeah.
What
Which
I
was approached, which he was approached by the
hmm
FBI.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that, gotta make that very very clear,
Mm-hmm.
so people don't think like that he had a actual choice in the
Mm-hmm,
matter
hmm.
of what he was doing. He was coerced by a federal agent to do.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think that's key because to me, I would be like, you know what, man, he did have a choice, but you never know what the FBI had on him. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? And say, hey, man,
right,
look, if you don't do this, look, this is what we gonna do. You know
right,
what I'm saying?
right.
So and of course we know the same thing with Malcolm X. We know a lot of
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
The FBI infiltrates, especially during those years, infiltrated a lot of Black Power movement, and that was something interesting that I discovered while looking at Martin Luther King was that the Black Power movement starts way earlier than people believe. You know what I'm saying? Um, because in Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, he mentions the Nation of Islam. I'm gonna try to pull this up here. He mentions like the Nation of Islam.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, he mentions the Nation of Islam. Um, and it kind of goes into the Black Power movement. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Talking about these individuals because, like I said, talked about Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture um, was a believer in nonviolence.
Right.
Um, rhetoric. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then of course, he just makes a switch. And he's like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in this excuse me, in this letter, he said, letter from a Birmingham jail. And in this letter from Birmingham jail, who he's talking to, he's primarily talking to white Christians, of the South, what I mean, who are, supporting the civil rights movement, but they're kind of like standoffish on it. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And so Martin Luther King is kind of like, hey, man, like, look, you got to understand the situation. Look, if you criticize what I'm doing, you have to understand the situation that you put me in when you
Right.
do that. You have to understand what the stakes are, what the situation is. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty much what he's talking about. And he's like, hey, these are the situations where we just come in here and we are trying to basically get what's owed, get what's promised to
Right.
us. You know what I'm saying? And that people, white business owners promise us that they would act accordingly in the law, and they did not do that. So we have to. This is how we're going to respond. And he's saying, and that's what he's talking about in this letter, Birmingham jail. And there's a part where he says, I started thinking about the fact that I stand in the middle of two opposing forces in the Negro community. One is a force of complacency made up of Negroes who, as a result of long years of oppression, have been so completely drained of self respect and a sense of somebodyness that they have adjusted to segregation. And on the other hand, of a few Negroes in the middle class who, because of a degree of academic or economic security, and because of points, they profit by segregation, have unconsciously become insensitive to the problems of the masses, right? He's talking about the holistic
Hmm.
versus individualistic, approach.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of people who have this idea, right? They'll be like, well, what about Oprah? What about Jay-Z? What
Right.
about, these individuals and not the holistic approach about the
Hmm.
masses, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I'm gonna read that again. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Uh, yeah, that that have adjusted segregation, and on the other hand, of a few Negroes in the middle class who, because of a degree of academic and economic security, and because at points they profit by segregation, have unconsciously become insensitive to the problems of the masses. The other force is one of bitterness and hatred, and comes perilously close to advocating violence. It is expressed in the various Black nationalist groups that are springing up over the nation, and this is where we're talking about the Black Power movement, right?
Hmm.
The largest and best known being Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad's Muslim movement. This movement is nourished by the contemporary frustration over the continued existence of racial discrimination. It is made up of people who have lost faith in America, who have absolutely repudiated Christianity, and who have concluded that the white man is an incurable devil. I have tried to stand between these two forces, saying that we need not follow the do nothingism of the complacent or the hatred and despair of the Black nationalists. There is a more excellent way of love and nonviolent protest.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I find that interesting. Again, you know what I mean? Like, you can see the parallels, you know what I mean? Like, you can see the parallels of today and yesterday, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
these individuals, we wouldn't call them middle class. We would call them, our Black celebrities, our Black athletes, you know what I mean?
Right.
Who really don't care, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and the individual, and they profit, off of, because I just remember, I was talking to B last night, and I was telling him about how, about that quote, and how it reminded me of when Jay-Z, he goes to be part of the NFL, right? And he gives
Hmm.
that conference, and he's like, yeah, kneeling, we're done with that. And like,
Right, right.
but then you put out 444 talking about, like, bro, come on, man. Come
Yeah.
on, dog. Come on, man. Like, come on,
Well,
man. Are we really done with that? And then the year after, then you have George
yeah,
Floyd that happens. You know what I'm saying? So we weren't really done with that. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
and it's it's the disconnect, right? It's
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
it's the and and there's a lot of other celebrities, that Black celebrities, that do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? A lot of
Right,
sports analysts. You know what I'm saying? Who, not the individuals that have an agenda, right? Like Jason Whitlock, he has an agenda. You know what I'm saying?
right, right.
You'll have the individuals like Marcus Wiley, who will say stuff like that, and you're like,
Yeah.
what? What?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Charles Barkley used to be that
Charles
way.
Barkley, Charles Barkley. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Shaq.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But Charles Barkley had a wake up moment,
Hmm.
you know, and started really understanding some stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, that's so I found that to be interesting. Not only that, but it made me like go down another hole about when the Black Power movement starts, and it starts well before Malcolm X. It starts well before Martin Luther King. It just wasn't called Black Power movement. You know what I'm saying?
hmm, hmm,
But it was these individuals that were, they were pretty much fed up with the system, and they were fed up with the racial hierarchy and the racism, and and they wanted change, and they were willing to tote guns and shoot for it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I thought that was interesting. But again, it goes back to what I was saying when Martin Luther King talks about a person. When he calls people out by name. You know what I'm saying?
hmm, hmm,
So when people are talking about that quote, the content of their character, and the content of their character and the color of their skin, Martin Luther King is very specifically talking about Black people, and very
right,
specifically talking about Black children. So
right,
he's not lumping everybody in that. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
we do this thing where we lump everybody into that quote, and then he's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, and Martin Luther King does that several times throughout several speeches. If you watch it in context or listen to a lot of his speeches in context,
right,
and the
right.
cheat. Yeah, go ahead.
It's sort of how they use that quote to then basically play reverse racism.
Yeah, 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 and that's what they do. Yeah, and that's what
Yeah,
they
yeah,
do. yeah, yeah. Well, you can't judge me on the content of my character. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
like,
Even though you don't have economic power to
yeah,
even suppress this person,
yeah,
but they
yeah,
will
yeah,
tell
yeah.
you that you do.
That you do and you don't, because again, man, what people don't get about racism is that racism is about the whole, not the individual, right?
Right.
So people, and Martin Luther King, he makes a distinction on this, right? Like, racism is not about, these individual interactions, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's bigotry and that's hatred, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And he's very distinct in saying that, hey, look, these black people aren't being racist, they're just being bigoted and hatred, right? And there's another speech where he calls out black supremacy, and he's saying the
Hmm.
same thing, and but but we've been led to believe in this binary thing, right? We believe, there's black and white, there's good and bad, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Instead of
Hmm.
this the intersectionality of it all, um but yeah, man, yeah.
Hmm.
Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there because I was
Yeah.
I was like, because when I mentioned the black supremacy, I was like, all right, man, which speech is that? I need to go look that one up. But yeah, man. Uh, talking to the hold on, let me see here. Let me pull this comment up. Uh, let's see here. Let me say that. Let's see. Oh, what the heck? Funny you say that because I thought he was talking to the FBI in his last speech. Thought he knew they were going to kill him. Oh, his last speech was to the mountaintop, on the mountaintop.
Hmm.
That was his last speech. That was the last speech. Yeah, and in that speech, yeah, he's kind of prophetic because he's talking about in the mountaintop. Look, I'm not gonna see you there. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it. And he verily, yeah, I've been to the mountaintop. There we go, bro. I
Hmm.
appreciate you. Yeah, I've been to the mountaintop. That's what it's called. Yeah, uh, you know, um, yeah, man. Yeah, he was very prophetic in that one. And talking about, he would die the next day, I think.
Hmm.
I think it's the next day. Yeah, the next day he would get shot. Um, you know, yeah, and there was yeah, man. I'm trying to find if I put down a quote. I think I put down a quote from that one. Uh I have to find it. But yeah, yeah, and that one, man, I thought about it when I was reading his reading that speech, but he was very prophetic in that one, man.
Yeah.
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 Let me see if I can find it, man. Uh, uh, about the delay, I'm looking it up. Let's see what he say.
Mhm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right, brother. You're right, brother Caitlin. Yeah, man. He most definitely talked in a manner to where he wasn't afraid to die,
Yeah.
which is kind of scary. When you think about it, man.
Well,
Yeah.
to bring it full circle,
Hmm.
if you remember, Tupac had a interview where
Hmm.
he was talking about our leaders at that point of time wasn't afraid to die,
Hmm.
and then he was saying, he said, "Name me one person that's over 50 years old that's afraid that's afraid to die." That
Hmm.
and basically saying like now they're afraid to die, so
Hmm.
they won't
Hmm.
fight for nothing.
Yeah.
And that was profound. Which Tupac was a avid reader, so I'm
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he followed the speeches of Martin Luther King and so forth. To go on because he had some parallels in some of the stuff that he said. that
Mhm.
aligned with what Martin Luther King was saying in some of the radical speeches.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. And interesting because I was reading about it the other day. I don't know when I did my notes on it, but the so Ralph Abernathy. That's Martin Luther King wasn't feeling good. Ralph Abernathy was supposed to give so Martin Luther King was like, "Hey, Ralph, can you go over there and give that speech? Can you go over there and give a speech?" And Ralph goes there and he gives a speech, and I guess the crowd was like, "Hey, dog, we ain't come to see you." So
Hmm.
then Ralph gives Martin Luther King a call at the hotel, and like, "Hey, man, they calling for you, man. They don't want to hear me speak." So
Hmm.
then Martin Luther King uh, goes over and he gives that mountaintop speech.
Wow.
Yeah, 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 man, yeah, man, and yeah, man, and again, man, Martin Luther King, he's become this radical man where he is just, I think he, he just get to a point where most black people get, they get fed up and tired, man, you know,
Yeah.
man, because he talks about in this speech where he's like, I can remember when Negroes were just going around, as Ralph has said, so often scratching where they itch and laughing when they were not tickled. But that day is over. We mean business now, and we are determined to
Hmm.
gain our rightful place in God's world. You
Hmm.
know, because in this speech he's talking about how this is God's world, right? And we've been
Right.
placed here, and yeah, yeah, you right, bro, man. He was probably trying to call out sick, man. He just,
Hmm.
yeah, man. He just, that's it's just interesting, man. How his this speech and his death, man, because in it, that's what he just talking about, how this is God's world, and how, and he's like kind of traveling back in time, you know what I mean, like
Hmm.
looking from where the civil rights movement began and where it is, and and all the places that he traveled and stuff like that, man. And yeah, he just spoke like, yeah, it was the entire, almost like that, in the Spike Lee movie Malcolm X. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
when that
Yeah.
scene where Denzel is just like, he's just like floating to the to the auditorium. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yeah, you get that feeling, reading this. You know what I'm saying? You know, um, but by this time, Martin is a radical, man. Martin is speaking against the government. He's against Vietnam. He's against the Vietnam War. Even though he knew it would cost him, points against, with Lyndon Johnson. You know what I mean, and with the public. You know what I'm saying? By this time, Martin, he has like a low approval rating amongst
Hmm.
Americans, and even low and just a low approval rating amongst black people. You know what I'm saying? There are black people, again, the black power movement is gaining traction. You know what I mean?
Right.
The black power
Right.
movement is getting louder, and that's how it leads to this event, right? The national Black Political Convention in 1972. You know what I mean? You get the all these black power, thought leaders who were a part of the civil rights movement, and then they like, forget this nonviolent stuff. You know what I'm saying? We need to have different rhetoric. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So then you have the integrationists versus the separatists and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? But again, like you were saying, Martin did not stop fighting economically for people, right? He went to Memphis, Tennessee. That's why
Hmm.
he was in Memphis, right?
Hmm.
Fighting for wages for sanitation workers. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And more importantly, Martin begins the Poor People's Campaign, right?
Hmm.
Right before his death, and he begins Poor People's Campaign to address poverty in America amongst people. And all of that. All of his speeches, everything aligns to that, man. Everything aligns to him starting the Poor People's Campaign and him being
Right.
this. No, excuse me, being this radical, you know what I mean? That people they just started not to like close to his death, and like Brother Kately saying, man, it's just eerie how all of that kind of just played out, you know.
Right.
But yeah, man. You got anything else, bro?
No, man, no.
Mm,
I think we have reclaimed Dr. King, and
hmm
I don't think we should stop here. Um,
hmm
I think we should take a more deep dive into
hmm
um, some more of his speeches in a um, more formal way,
hmm
um,
hmm hmm
and so people can see the speech in a holistic way.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think we should just keep going from here.
Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, most definitely. We can do that, man. I'll end by saying that, hey, man. This myth, Martin Luther King, that people believe in. We got to stop believing in that myth. We got to stop perpetuating that myth. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And understand that Martin Luther King was he was way more than an ad lib part of the speech. You know what I'm saying? That he
Mhm.
was specifically talking about black children, and he was specifically talking about black people. Martin Luther King was about economic justice and economic repair. You know what I'm saying? So we have to move accordingly. You know what I'm saying? We have
Right.
to be deliberate, especially a lot of us who are in our 40s, our late 30s. You know what I'm saying? We have to be deliberate about our messaging. We have to be deliberate about voting. We have to be
Hmm.
deliberate about participation. You know what I'm saying? In these economic systems, man. And supporting and getting to that black power thing about supporting black businesses and black
Hmm.
and things of that nature. But more importantly, man, we had to not allow other people to tell our story.
Yeah.
And what we've had allowed to do with what we have allowed with Martin Luther King is allow people to tell our story. You know what I'm saying? It's like Malcolm X, man. A lot of people only get obsessed with the militant Malcolm X. They don't get
Hmm.
obsessed with the real Malcolm X, who comes back from Mecca, and and he starts his Orthodox Muslim organization, and then and also he was delving into politics, right? He starts his
Hmm.
political organization as well, and he kicked that off with his ballot or the bullet speech by Malcolm X. It is a great speech. Go listen to it.
Yeah.
Go listen to ballot or the bullet, and then listen to Martin Luther King's the Other Americas, and you will
Hmm.
see how they come together. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But Martin Luther King was not about black people and white people coming together primarily just to make people feel good, right? Like he said, the
Right.
obnoxious piece. He wasn't about that. You know what I'm saying? He was about black people coming to get their check.
Yeah.
That's why he was going to Washington, because black people need to get a check. And even
Yeah.
today, I believe that too. Reparations is well overdue. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But we need to stop allowing people to, always present this mythologized Martin Luther King, and really start being honest and telling stories. Given our history in context. You know what I mean? And context, and that's important, man. Yeah, man. But hey, man, appreciate everybody for tuning in, man. Really appreciate you, man. We will be. Dang, what's the next thing? Man, I just had a complete brain fart, man. I'm getting old, man. But but yeah, man. So follow us on YouTube, man. Make sure you like and subscribe, man. Look for us on your favorite streaming platform for podcasts, man. We'll be putting out more content, especially for Black History Month. We're talking about doing a book club based on this. The National Black Political Convention, and what it was is just there's this myth out there that Black people didn't come together to form a political block, a
Hmm.
political voting block, and it happened in 1972. Well, almost happened in 1972. There were issues, as they are today, of why that didn't happen. So we would probably do that during Black History Month. Yeah, man. But to look for other content, we appreciate you guys, man. Take care of yourselves. Be safe out there. Take care of your families and things of that nature, man. And we wish you guys the best, man. This your boy Tay. That's JY.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
JY. We're
Yeah,
out,
man.
man, from Yah'm
We
saying
out of
podcast.
here, man. You know what I'm saying? Podcast. We up out of here. All right. Peace.